My project is about how life may have originated from crystals in clay. Graham Cairns Smith came up with this theory in the 1960s, and scientists have been continually researching the possibility and geology of this idea ever since. But there are many theories on the origin of life. Some hypothesize that organisms began on another planet and were transported here on an asteroid. A British chemist, Leslie Orgel, is famous for his theories on the origins of life. His most popular theory states that life began in submarine hydrothermal vents. The heat in the vents were theoretically hot enough to bind certain chemicals and minerals together and create amino acids, a critical reaction which would lead to the creation of proteins. Today we know that lots of life is sustained at these vents, so this primordial soup containing a solution rich in organic compounds in the primitive oceans of the Earth doesn't seem too far-fetched. But this YouTube comment is my personal favorite origin of life story. Regardless of your theory on the origin of life, scientists still struggle with the missing link between steps 2 and 3. How did atoms suddenly become small biomolecules? In 2015, Jean-Francis Lambert released his paper, Origins of Life from the Mineral to the Biochemical World, and his discontent with Orgel's theory, stating, "Let us suppose that our primordial soup is highly concentrated with monomeric amino acids. For example, it contains 0.5 mole of glycine per liter, which seems very high. In order to encounter a single molecule of polymer, one would have to scan through 10 to the 50th tons of solution. To put this into perspective, the total mass of the Earth is only 6.1 to the 21st tons. It will not do to say that even unlikely events will finally happen given enough time. There has simply not been enough time, by far, since the origin of the Earth, for a single molecule of useful peptide to have formed by random combinations, meaning the chances of life forming in hydrothermal vents is very, very low." So back in the 1960s, Cairns Smith thought outside of the box and began looking into evidence of life through geology instead of in the focus of biology, which was where the rest of the scientists of his time were looking. He began by looking at Stanley Miller's research, where Miller created amino acids from chemicals in a lab. His process is shown here. Cairns Smith's aim was to find a system much simpler than modern life, but which had some of the crucial properties of a living system, so he looked to clays. If you look at clay under a microscope, you can see it is made up of lots of tiny crystals. Crystals can actually grow if given the proper environment. This is called self-assembly. They also act very similar to genes in that any imperfection in the mother crystal's structure they will pass down to the next crystal, which is called the daughter crystal. This could be seen as the very simplest form of passing on DNA. In fact, this process is called DNA tile crystallization and has been the study of both Rebecca Schulman and Eric Winfrey, who both released DNA tile crystallization research papers in 2007. Crystals can grow in different ways too, which suggests differentiation down the genetic line. Lambert states, "A rather recent development in geological science is the realization that the mineral world has had an evolution in terms of complexity and diversity that may rival those of the biological world." In short, clay crystal structures can be very unique, as we can see here. So if we look at the steps to rising complexity again, we are looking for that missing link between 2 and 3. It is possible that the process of the mother crystal passing down its traits or imperfections to its daughter crystal, as we see here, implies evolving. This is because it is still a branch of the same exact crystal, even though it's called the daughter crystal. And if over millions of years crystals kept evolving, it's possible that it led to the process of self-assembly, splitting apart from the crystals and becoming its own set of biological chemicals. As crazy as it sounds, we have to consider that hydrothermal vents binding chemicals is just as crazy, if not more improbable. Another feature of crystals that Rebecca Schulman points out is that because there are unique crystals, some are stronger than others, or even grow faster. This can be seen as a case for natural selection in these minerals. The weaker, slower growing ones won't quote-unquote survive and reproduce. This is called the crystals as genes hypothesis. And Schulman states, part of the goal for origin of life research is very broadly to ask how one can design systems in chemistry where information can be replicated. So she took certain crystals and encoded information in them to see if they would pass on the coded information. The DNA tile structure did pass on the same coded information, proving a genetic type result was occurring. Karen Smith reasoned that eventually a genetic takeover happened. The biological molecules developed the ability to replicate by themselves and left the crystals behind. I hope you enjoyed watching these opposing theories on the origins of life, and these are my citations. This has been Geologic Science with Brogan Smith.